The desert wind howled across the training field, carrying sand like tiny razors slicing through the dawn air. Before the sun had even risen fully, the camp was already alive with the metallic clatter of rifles, the crunch of boots, and the low rumble of generators humming in the background. But in the middle of all that noise, something made the SEAL commander stop dead in his tracks. Near the weapons bay, where only certified armorers were allowed to lay a hand on the heavy-grade rifles, a woman sat on the ground cross-legged, calm, and frighteningly focused. Her sleeves were rolled up, sun brushing the scars on her forearms as she wiped down a Barrett .50 caliber sniper rifle like it was a delicate instrument, not a weapon that could tear through steel a mile away. She didn't look up. She didn't act nervous. She didn't even seem aware of the stunned soldiers watching her. It was as if she'd done this 1,000 times, in 1,000 lifetimes. The commander's boots crunched loudly as he approached, his voice sharp enough to cut through the wind. "Who authorized you to touch that rifle?" he demanded. Anyone else would have jumped, stuttered, or at least shown a flicker of fear. But she only continued polishing the massive barrels, speaking in a voice so steady it almost felt unnatural. "It was collecting dust, sir. I couldn't let that happen." The commander's jaw tightened. Recruits respected the Barrett like a holy relic. They didn't touch it, they didn't breathe near it. And yet here she was, cleaning it with the sort of confidence only a veteran sniper was supposed to have. He stepped closer, a hint of disbelief in his tone. "Do you even know what that thing can do?" This time, she paused. Slowly, she lifted her head, revealing eyes that looked like they'd stared across battlefields far darker than any training ground. "Yes, sir," she said quietly. "I made a shot with one of these." From 3,247 meters, for a moment, the entire field fell silent. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. A number like that wasn't just impressive, it was impossible. Only a handful of snipers in history had ever come close. The commander blinked, unsure if he'd misheard her. 3,247 meters. She nodded once with a kind of calm that wasn't pride, it was memory. "Painful memory. Confirmed," she said. Afghanistan, 2018, around them, soldiers who had stopped mid-task stared with wide eyes, the weight of that number sinking in. Most people never even saw an enemy at that distance. She had taken one down. The commander studied her face, searching for arrogance, a smirk, anything. But there was nothing, only quiet, steady truth in her voice. The kind that came from someone who had been somewhere terrible and walked out with scars no file could ever record. At that moment, without knowing her past, without understanding why her name wasn't written in the history books, the commander felt something he hadn't felt toward a new recruit in years, an uneasy mix of curiosity and respect. Because whoever she was, whatever she had done, the truth was simple. She didn't look like a soldier trying to impress her superior. She looked like someone who had carried a burden so heavy the world had tried to wipe it away. And yet here she sat, cleaning the same weapon that once made her a ghost, a rumor, a classified whisper lost in forgotten reports. That morning, as the sun finally lifted behind the desert mountains, the commander had no idea that he was standing in front of a legend the military had erased. A legend who didn't want to be remembered, and a legend whose story was about to unfold in a way that none of them were prepared for. The desert morning began like any other, harsh winds sweeping across the training field, carrying sand across rows of equipment waiting to be used. The sun was barely a sliver of gold behind the ridgeline, but the camp was already awake with clanking metal, shouted orders, and the low hum of preparation. Yet, in the middle of all this movement, something unusual caught the SEAL commander's attention. Near the weapons bay, where only certified specialists dared to tread, a lone figure sat cross-legged on the ground. A woman, quiet, composed, almost unnaturally calm. She wasn't fumbling, nervous, or even cautious. Instead, she cleaned a Barrett .50 caliber sniper rifle with the smooth precision of someone handling a familiar friend. It was the kind of ease you only saw in veteran snipers, people who had lived behind a scope longer than most soldiers carried a rifle. The commander approached, the crunch of his boots loud against the sand. "Who authorized you to touch that rifle?" he demanded, no hesitation, no fear. She didn't even look up. "It was collecting dust, sir." Her voice was steady, quiet, and far too confident. That tiny response was the first crack in a mystery he never expected to uncover. The commander narrowed his eyes, studying the woman like she was an equation that didn't add up. Recruits trembled around a Barrett. She handled it like a ritual. "Do you even know what that weapon can do?" he asked sharply. This time she paused, her hands stilling on the barrel. She lifted her gaze, calm, steady, unbroken. "Yes, sir. I've made a shot with one." 3,247 meters. Those words dropped into the desert air like a bomb. Soldiers stopped mid-task. Even the wind seemed to freeze. The commander's breath caught. 3,247 meters. She nodded once, a simple gesture, no pride, no emotion, just truth. "Confirmed kill," she said quietly. "Afghanistan." 2018, the commander had seen impossible things on the battlefield, but a number like that belonged in military folklore. He scanned her expression for bravado, but found only something far heavier: pain. The kind that came from doing something extraordinary in a moment of desperation. But then another question rose in his mind, dark and unsettling. If she had made such a historic shot, why wasn't her name in any record? Why had he never heard of her? That unanswered question was the start of everything that followed. That evening, when most of the camp settled into its usual rhythm, the commander sent for her. The tent was dim, just a single lamp flickering between them, casting long shadows across her expressionless face. "That shot you mentioned," he began slowly. "Why isn't it on your record?" The question hung heavy in the air. She took a breath, steady but tinged with something fragile beneath. "Because it wasn't supposed to happen," she replied. Her voice softened, as if the memory itself weighed more than words could carry. She described a mission gone wrong, an extraction that had spiraled into chaos, her team ambushed, air support delayed. The last evacuation chopper descending into a kill zone. She hadn't taken the shot for glory. She had done it to save lives, to stop an RPG team from turning that helicopter into a flaming grave. Command later called the mission a failure. The casualties too high, the location politically inconvenient. So they buried the operation and everything she had done with it. The commander watched her closely, no pride, no ego. Only guilt wrapped around a memory she didn't want but couldn't escape. In that moment, he realized she wasn't a recruit. She was a ghost erased, forgotten, but still carrying every scar. Weeks passed, and the commander watched her move through drills with unnerving precision. She didn't brag, she didn't compete, she simply performed flawlessly. But the moment that revealed her true skill came during a deployment deep in the mountains, a hostage rescue gone dangerously wrong. Their intel was outdated, enemy positions fortified, Overwatch snipers hidden across ridges. Every entry point was a death sentence. The atmosphere was thick, people with tension as the team huddled around the digital map, searching for a solution that didn't exist. "We'll be shredded before we reach the gate," Lieutenant Harris muttered. Then she spoke, a voice so calm it cut through panic like a blade. "You don't need to reach it. I can take out their Overwatch positions from here," Harris scoffed. "You can't even see the ridge." "I don't need to see it," she replied. "Just give me the coordinates." She lay flat on the dirt, adjusting her bipod, watching the wind drift through the canyon. First shot silence, then a distant plume of dust. One enemy down, second shot another. She dismantled the perimeter with surgical precision, clearing a path without moving an inch. Within minutes, she changed the entire battlefield. That day, she didn't just prove her skill, she saved their lives. After the hostages were freed, danger didn't end. A sudden explosion shattered the compound, throwing soldiers to the ground. Amid the smoke, Lana sprinted toward the threat, not away from it. she spotted a second rocket team preparing to fire. Without hesitation, she dropped behind cover, steadied her breath, and pulled the trigger. Silence followed, lives saved again. That night, the commander sat beside her by the campfire, the flames reflecting in her eyes. "You saved us all today," he said quietly. She didn't look up. "No, sir. I just did what I had to. Every shot means someone didn't make it home." That's not something to celebrate. Her words carried the weight of every life she had taken and every life she had saved. From then on, she trained the next generation, teaching not just marksmanship but responsibility, restraint, and the emotional price of long-range warfare. Years later, when she retired, the commander, now an admiral, handed her a beret wrapped in a folded flag. Engraved on its barrel, "Distance means nothing when duty is close to the heart." She walked away quietly, without applause, without ceremony. A legend not because she wanted to be remembered, but because others could never forget her. The night had settled softly over the base, the last embers of the campfire glowing like distant memories fading into the dark. Lana Cruz stood at the edge of the landing strip, the old beret slung over her shoulder, the engraved words glinting faintly under the dim perimeter lights. She didn't look like a hero. She didn't stand tall for applause or wait for gratitude. She simply gazed out toward the horizon the same way she had looked through a scope all her life, searching for danger so others didn't have to. The admiral watched her from a distance, realizing that some soldiers never truly retire. Their battles end on paper, but the war stays quietly inside them, carried with a dignity the world rarely sees. She walked forward slowly, each step soft, steady, and burdened for the first time in years. The runway stretched ahead like a road into a new life, one without coordinates, without targets, without the constant responsibility of keeping others alive. Yet even now, she moved with the calm certainty of someone who understood duty not as an order but as a calling. Behind her, the base stood silent. In front of her, the desert opened wide. Some legends are loud, carved into history with medals and speeches. But others are whispered past from soldier to soldier, retold at campfires, remembered in moments of fear as stories of those who once did the impossible. Lana Cruz belonged to the second kind, a legend not because of a single shot, but because of the heart that guided every one of them. And as she disappeared into the fading light, one truth remained: real heroes don't chase recognition. They leave echoes quiet, powerful, unforgettable.